When did you meet your guardian angel? A crazy man at the bus stop asked, "Are you the president of the United States?" "No," I said immediately. "Thank God, I thought I had to shoot you in the ear." I started backing away from him. His eyes were wild and he kept twitching his head like he was hearing voices. His right hand kept moving to his jacket pocket, then pulling away like he was fighting with himself. "Mr. President, sir, I don't think you should get on this bus. There's a bomb. I'm not the president, and there's no bomb." He grabbed my arm with surprising strength. His fingernails were black with dirt and too long. "You have to trust me. Don't get on that bus. The devil is on board." Great. A religious nut talking about the devil. The bus pulled up with a screech of brakes and the doors hissed open. I yanked my arm free and got on quickly while he grabbed at my sleeve. "The devil, man! The devil!" I tapped my transit card and found a seat near the back, trying to forget about him. The bus was half empty, just the usual after-work crowd. A tired nurse in scrubs, some teenagers with backpacks, a man in a suit reading his phone. Then I looked up, and 3 rows ahead was a woman wearing a red devil horns headband, like the kind people wear on Halloween, except it was March. She had on a normal business outfit, but those bright red plastic horns stuck up from her brown hair. My stomach dropped. I looked out the window, and the crazy man was pressed against the glass, pointing at her with both hands now. "The devil! The devil!" he kept mouthing. His breath was fogging up the glass. The bus driver yelled at him to get back and started pulling away from the curb. The woman was acting normal, just scrolling her phone, but something felt wrong. She kept reaching into her purse and checking something. Her leg was bouncing nervously like she had too much coffee. Every few seconds, she'd touch her purse, then pull her hand back, touch, and pull back. I thought about what he said about a bomb, about shooting the president, the way she kept touching her purse. My hands started sweating. The rational part of my brain said this was stupid. Some mentally ill, homeless guy made a lucky guess about devil horns. Halloween accessories in March weren't that weird. Maybe she was going to a party, but my gut was screaming at me to get off the bus. The woman's hand went into her purse again and stayed there longer this time. She was gripping something. At the next stop, I got off. I stood on the sidewalk feeling like an idiot as the bus pulled away. The woman with devil horns didn't even look up from her phone. The crazy man had disappeared. No sign of him anywhere. I waited 15 minutes for the next bus, feeling stupid for letting some mentally ill person spook me with coincidences. My wife was going to be annoyed I was late for dinner. I'd have to make up some excuse because telling her I got scared by a crazy man and plastic devil horns would sound insane. The 47 bus came and I took that instead, even though it meant walking an extra 6 blocks home. During the ride, I kept thinking about the man's eyes. They were terrified, but not unfocused, like he was seeing something real that nobody else could see. That night, I turned on the news while making dinner. I was chopping onions when the breaking news alert came on. 3 people shot on the 42 bus this evening. The shooter, identified as Cindy McMillan, then turned the gun on herself. The knife slipped and I nearly cut my finger. They showed her photo. It was the woman with the devil horns. The reporter continued. Witnesses say McMillan stood up suddenly approximately 15 minutes into the route and started shooting randomly while screaming about voices in her head. She was wearing devil horn accessories at the time. 3 passengers were killed before McMillan turned the gun on herself. I sat down hard on my couch. My legs felt like water. 3 people were dead. If I'd stayed on that bus for 15 more minutes, I might have been one of them. The crazy man had called her the devil, had warned me about violence. He said there'd be shooting, but how did he know?
I read my sister's fan fiction to our church. My sister Desiree is the perfect daughter. Youth group leader, purity ring, straight A's, volunteers at 3 different charities. Me? I'm the family disgrace who got kicked out at 17 for using vanilla-scented lip gloss. Yes, really. Mom said it was provocative, and Desiree backed her up, saying she was concerned about my rebellious spirit. That was 5 years ago. Now Desiree leads prayer circles while our parents showcase her at every church event. I still hear weekly about how I broke their hearts. Desiree started acting different towards me once I started dating Edward. We were dating for a year and his family actually liked me. His mom always said I was good for him and kept him grounded. But whenever Edward came around my family, we would get side eyes. Meanwhile, Desiree and her boyfriend Oscar were the family's perfect couple. 3 years of a godly relationship, never alone together, holding hands only during prayer. Then Desiree accidentally let it slip at family dinner that Edward stays over sometimes. "Oh, I saw his car there all night when I drove by once," she said innocently. "Not like Oscar and me. He's never even been inside my apartment without supervision." Mom cried about my sin. Dad said I was destroying our family's reputation. Desiree and Oscar prayed over me while I sat there with a straight face. 2 months later, things with Edward were still good. His parents invited me to their anniversary dinner. That's when Desiree escalated. She ran into Edward's mom at the grocery store and said she was concerned about my well-being. She told her she'd found birth control in my apartment, then added, "I just pray they're being safe since they're so active." My sister's always been very physical. Not like me and my boyfriend. We're waiting for marriage, of course. Edward's mom went cold after that. She started asking if I was serious about her son or just having fun. The 3rd time was cruel. I just found out I was pregnant, like literally peed on the stick that morning. I hadn't even told Edward yet, but Desiree had came over that same day. She saw the empty pregnancy test box in the bathroom trash. Within 3 hours, she'd called Edward's mother to prepare her for the news and warned her that I'd been acting desperate lately and might try to lock Edward down. Edward's mom called him screaming about me being a gold digger. He came home demanding to know why his mother knew before he did. We had our first real fight, but none of that compared to what she did the following Thursday. Our parents had just announced they were paying for Desiree and Oscar's future wedding venue while I was dealing with pregnancy alone. I thought Edward and I had worked through everything, even got excited about the baby. Then Desiree did something unforgivable. She created a fake email account in my name and sent a message to Edward's mom confessing that I'd trapped her son, that I'd stopped taking birth control without telling him, that I knew his family had money. Edward's family hired a lawyer, started talking about custody battles. Edward looked at me like he didn't know me. I called Desiree crying. "Why are you doing this to me? What is your problem?" She laughed. "Maybe if you weren't such an embarrassment, I wouldn't have to keep cleaning up your messes." She hung up. I still didn't understand. She was always a little petty, but never like this. That night, while sobbing in my bathroom, I remembered Desiree had left her laptop at my house when she came over. I went to grab it, planning to throw it at her door, but it was open. Hundreds of explicit stories. My sister writing fanfiction on Wattpad. From Harry Styles dated 15 years ago to even Jesus himself now. My perfect, pure sister who wouldn't even kiss Oscar after 3 years was writing the filthiest content imaginable while destroying my life. Everything made sense. She needed me to be the family scandal. She was jealous of my freedom, because if they looked too closely at their angel, they'd see she was sinning more than I ever did. At Sunday service, Desiree was giving her monthly purity testimony. I waited until she said, keeping pure in body and mind. Then I stood. Desiree, you forgot your laptop at my house, I called out. Should I read what you're working on? She went white. I opened to her stories. Listen to Desiree's latest work, I said to the congregation. People looked confused. Desiree tried to grab the laptop. I kept reading. Each sentence worse. By the third sentence, she was living her wildest dreams. Several people recognized Oscar's mannerisms in the character. Stop, Desiree begged. I smiled. Why? You have hundreds of these. Making money off them while calling me a sinner? Mom fainted. Her boyfriend Oscar was staring at Desiree. The tattoo description, he said slowly. My roommate has that tattoo on his butt. When did you see it? I accidentally exposed my sister having sex with her boyfriend's roommate. Is it possible to be friends with a pick-me girl? In my junior year of high school, I moved to Waterbridge High, and I was really nervous about making new friends. So when a group of girls invited me to sit with them, I was relieved. We hit it off instantly, immediately gossiping about who the hottest teacher was, and one of them even let me borrow her glossier lip gloss. But that's when a girl, Kaylee, sat beside us. She announced as loudly as possible, "Oh wow, is that makeup?" Personally, I prefer a bare face. It just seems less fake and it's more authentic. She said it to target me, all while staring right at the table full of boys for validation, to see if they were looking over. They weren't. Later that day, the girls I was sitting with were full-on gossiping about her, saying things like she was a thirsty hoe for attention and a desperate pick-me girl. I didn't join in. Not because I didn't agree, I definitely did, but because my mom had drilled into me that kindness is contagious since I was 5. So I made it my mission to try and be her friend. And the next day during history class, I got my chance. Because my teacher paired me with Kaylee for the semester-long project. The first time we hung out to work on research, I noticed her walking ahead of me with her butt pushed out so far, she looked like she had scoliosis. "Why are you walking like that?" I asked, genuinely confused. She whipped around, hand on her hip. "If you don't have a big butt, just say that." I literally had to clench my fist to stop myself from saying something I'd regret. But the more I hung out with Kaylee, the less any girl wanted to be seen with me. And soon, she became my only friend. Within 2 weeks, my phone stopped buzzing with party invites. The lunch table I'd been sitting at since September suddenly had no room for me. I tried so hard to defend Kaylee to them. "She's actually not that bad when you get to know her," I insisted during chemistry, but they just rolled their eyes. What killed me was that same afternoon, Kaylee looked at me in front of 4 guys from our class and asked, "Who do you think looks better, me or her?" Be honest, I couldn't even think of a way to defend her to the girlies. Things got worse when I started dating Gordon, this guy from my theater. We'd been together for 3 weeks when Kaylee suddenly started showing up to his rehearsals. She'd touch his arm when she laughed, leaning in close to whisper jokes. When I mentioned feeling uncomfortable, she told Gordon I was the jealous type, not chill like her. We broke up after she convinced him I'd gone through his phone. I didn't even know his password. From there, it was hard not to hate her guts, and the project we were doing felt like I was chained to her. When I went to my guidance counselor about switching partners, she frowned at my file. Quitting now would show commitment issues. That'll look bad to colleges. By November, I was desperate. The project was due on Monday, and Kaylee still hadn't done her half of the work. So I decided to drive to her house and see what was going on for myself. I wasn't prepared for what would happen when her mom opened the door. She answered the door in yoga pants and a wine glass, and she invited me in. Immediately, I noticed the Saturdays are for the boys flag hanging over their TV. Kaylee was on the couch, texting someone, and her mom's voice went sharp. "Were you texting that girl again? What did I tell you about not being allowed to have female friends?" "I wasn't," Kaylee started, but her mom cut her off. "You should only be friends with boys. They're simpler." Then her mom noticed me standing there with a book bag, and her whole demeanor shifted. "Oh good, you're here to work on homework, not have some stupid girls' night." Kaylee stood up to get me water, and we locked eyes. The girl who'd tormented me for months looked completely dead behind the eyes, nothing like her bimbo school persona. When her mom went to refill her wine, Kaylee's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Please don't tell anyone about my mom." I looked at this girl who destroyed my social life, my relationship, nearly my future, and suddenly understood everything. Every cruel comment, every male validation seeking, every female friendship she'd sabotaged, it was all programming. I didn't tell anyone. And from there, we started becoming friends. Actually friends. I invited her over almost every day, and my mom showed her how a mom should actually be. Kind and loving. In senior year, Kaylee testified against her mom in court for emotional abuse. She got placed with her aunt 2 states away. Update. Yes, we're still friends. In 2 weeks, I'm getting married, and Kaylee will be my maid of honor.
Has anyone had a missing person story that ended differently than expected? The morning started weird before anything even happened. My girlfriend, Marin, woke up before me, which she never does, and she was already dressed. She didn't say good morning. She didn't kiss my forehead like she always does. She just said she had to take care of something, and walked out the door with her purse clutched to her chest like she was hiding something inside it. I thought she'd be back in an hour, but after she left, this awful feeling sat in my chest, heavy and tight, like I forgot something huge without knowing what it was. By 11, I checked my phone and saw nothing from her. Marin was the type to text me even if she just saw a funny squirrel outside, so the silence wasn't normal. It felt like a neon sign blinking missing. I tried calling. It rang once, then cut off. Not voicemail, just cut off. My stomach flipped. At noon, her best friend, Alina, called asking if Marin was with me. She sounded nervous, her voice shaking. When I told her no, she said, "Jason, I'm coming over. Something feels wrong." That was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one sensing this. While she drove over, I walked through the house looking for anything that could explain why Marin left like that. Her makeup bag was still on the counter, her lunchbox still in the fridge. The sweater she wore all the time was tossed over the couch, like she'd left in a rush. Then I found something that made my heart slam against my ribs. Her wallet. It was still on the dresser. She never went anywhere without it, even for a walk. Never. I whispered, "Oh no," before I even understood what I was afraid of. Alina showed up 10 minutes later, already crying. She asked a million questions. Was Marin upset last night? Tired? Did she say anything strange? I kept saying no, but each no made me feel sicker. No explanation, just vanishing. Then Alina said, "Check her location." She and Marin shared locations. I suddenly wished they didn't. When she pulled it up, she sucked in a sharp breath. She turned her location off. Neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other like we were bracing for something awful. By 3, Alina called Marin's parents. Her mom started crying. Her dad kept saying, "She probably just needed space." But even through the phone, I could tell he didn't believe it. My kitchen felt too quiet, too still, like the entire room was holding its breath. Then the doorbell rang. Not a normal ring. Someone laid on the button so long it buzzed through the whole house. Alina whispered, "Oh my God," and backed away. I opened the door a crack. A man in a dark windbreaker stood there, holding a clipboard against his chest. His car was parked crooked in the driveway, engine still running. His eyes kept darting toward the street, then back to me. "Is this the home of Marin Alvarez?" he asked. My heart stopped. I said yes. He swallowed hard and asked, "Are you close to her?" I didn't know what that meant, but I hated it immediately. It felt like someone twisting a knife. "She's my girlfriend. What happened? Where is she?" He didn't answer. Instead, "I'm going to need you and her family to come with me as soon as possible." Alina's hand shot to her mouth. Oh God, my legs went weak. "Why? Is she hurt?" The man shifted, voice dropping. "We received a call from someone at a private facility about her. I can't give details on the porch." Facility, not hospital. Facility. Everything inside me collapsed. I grabbed the doorframe just to stay upright. I croaked, "Please just tell me what happened to her." He looked at me for a long moment, deciding something. Finally, he said, "Her condition changed an hour ago. She asked for you." That was it. That was all he said, but it hit like a punch straight to the chest. We got into his car. I don't even remember the drive, just flashes of highway signs and Alina crying quietly in the back. He pulled into a brick building with tinted windows. No signs, no parking lot, just a single door with a keypad. My hands were sweating so much I kept wiping them on my jeans. Inside, it looked nothing like a hospital, more like an office. The man led us down a hallway and stopped at a small room. "She's inside," he said. I pushed the door open like I was bracing for horror. Instead, I saw Marin sitting on a chair, holding her head in her hands, breathing fast but alive. She looked up at me, eyes red and panicked. "Jason," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to scare anyone." I choked out, "What is this? What happened to you?" The man behind me finally explained. "She came here this morning because she thought she was having a medical emergency, but it turned out to be a severe panic attack. She didn't want anyone to know until she calmed down. She gave us permission to notify family only after she stabilized." My knees actually buckled. She was just scared, and she didn't want to burden me with it. I walked over and held her hands. She whispered, "I thought you'd think I was broken." I shook my head. "I thought I lost you." She cried into my shoulder for a while. We took her home. Nobody left her side the rest of the night. Has anyone had a missing person story?
The moon knows.
My husband abandoned me while I was dying, but what he said when he came crawling back changed everything. I was 6 months pregnant when we got in the car accident. Brett was driving and I was napping in the passenger seat, dreaming about painting the nursery yellow. I woke up to the sound of metal crushing and glass shattering, and then everything went black. 3 days later, I opened my eyes in a hospital bed with Brett sitting next to me holding my hand. His face was bruised, but he was okay. I wasn't. The baby was gone. My organs were destroyed from the impact, and the doctor said I'd need a heart transplant. Brett cried when he told me about the baby, and I watched tears run down his face while I felt completely numb inside. He said a drunk driver had run a red light and hit us on my side of the car. Everyone felt terrible for us. His parents swooped in and paid for everything, and his dad hired an army of lawyers to go after the other driver. My heart got worse over the next year. I was on the transplant list, but nothing was available, and I spent most days sitting on the couch struggling to breathe. One night, I told him I was scared I was going to die before a heart became available, and he said, "Don't talk like that," in this dead voice that made me feel completely alone. A few weeks later, he said, "You're sick all the time. I can't remember the last time we did anything fun." The words hit me like a slap. I said, "I'm waiting for a heart transplant." He said, "I know, but this is just our life now, and I hate it." My condition deteriorated until I could barely walk from the bedroom to the kitchen without my vision going dark around the edges. Brett started going out with friends multiple nights a week and coming home reeking of alcohol and someone else's perfume, but I couldn't find the energy to confront him. One morning, he sat down at the kitchen table and said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't watch you die. You're getting worse every day, and I didn't sign up for this." I felt something crack inside my chest that had nothing to do with my failing heart. He said, "I was grateful you survived, but I didn't realize you were never going to get better. I can't waste my life watching you deteriorate. You look terrible, and you're only going to get worse. I need to move on with my life." He moved out that week, and his parents stopped paying my medical bills. My nurse during this time was a man named Chris, who looked at me like I was still a person instead of a dying thing taking up space. After my divorce, he started visiting me outside of work just to talk. When a heart finally became available 2 years later, I called Chris before I called anyone else. The transplant was successful, and I recovered completely. Chris and I fell in love slowly and carefully, and 3 years after my transplant, we got engaged. Last month, Brett showed up at my apartment and had the audacity to smile when I opened the door. He said, "You look amazing. I heard about the transplant. I'm so glad you made it." I wanted to slam the door in his face. I said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to apologize. I was scared and I handled everything wrong. I want another chance. We could start over and even try for another baby." The air left my lungs. I said, "I'm engaged." He said, "Please. We were good together before the accident. We could be good again. I'll even let you do all the driving this time." Something about that sentence made my skin crawl. I said, "Why would it matter who's driving? A drunk driver hit us." He blinked and said, "Right, I just meant so you feel safe." After he left, I sat on my couch staring at the wall for an hour. Why would he say that? I found the other driver's name and tracked her down like a woman possessed. She was in a wheelchair with permanent spinal damage from the accident Brett caused. She said, "Brett's father paid me $200,000 to stay quiet and not press charges. He was the one who was drunk, not me. I have the police report from before he made the whole thing disappear. I'm sorry about your baby." I felt like I was hit all over again. Chris had a friend who was a lawyer and the other driver, and I went to him together to figure out our options. Brett was arrested a week later. At trial, I testified about everything while looking him dead in the eye. Losing the baby, needing a transplant, him abandoning me while I was dying from injuries he caused. The jury saw photos of the other driver in her wheelchair and heard how his father had paid her off and buried the police report. Brett took a stand and said it was an accident and he'd been traumatized too, and I wanted to scream. The prosecutor said, "You were drunk. You caused the accident. You killed your unborn child and permanently disabled another person. Then you abandoned your wife while she was dying from injuries you caused." The jury found him guilty, and the judge sentenced him to 8 years. I married Chris 6 months later. The other driver came to my wedding. Brett's serving his sentence.